Welcome to Seek Reality. I'm Roberta Grimes, and I'm so happy you're with us today. One of the two most important lessons that Jesus taught is that we must forgive. Forgiveness and love, those were Jesus's two great gifts to us. And until about a year and a half ago, I never had found any expert who taught forgiveness so well that I thought we really had found our guru of forgiveness. Not until I met today's guest. Now, just for a bit of background, with A Course in Miracles, which of course Jesus channeled, the miracle being taught in that whole big, thick blue book is, of course, forgiveness. And Jesus tells us in A Course of Miracles that miracles all come in just one size. We can forgive anything, no matter what happens. We always must, and we can forgive it, whatever happens. Forgiving goes hand in hand with loving, and we learn to forgive universally so we can love universally. And fortunately, Jesus' method of automatic, prevenient forgiveness works very well. But our guest today teaches another approach to forgiveness that might work even better for you. Our guest who is with us today for the fifth time is Brenda Reiss. Brenda is dedicated to helping people overcome obstacles that hold them back from living life to its fullest by guiding them through a special 5-step forgiveness process. She says that self-forgiveness helped her to transition out of victimhood and into the life that she was meant to live. Brenda has experienced these obstacles firsthand in the form of toxic relationships, eating disorders, anxiety, and some troubles in her life, which really were formidable. And that kind of problem, all kinds of problems really, can consume our everyday life. And when problems like these are allowed to control our lives, they make really what should be wonderful lives really pretty awful sometimes. Brenda has developed a very successful forgiveness coaching practice, and she's written a terrific little book which is called Forgive Yourself. I love this book. It's brief, it's easy to understand and to use, and I think everyone should read it. My wonderful friends, I'm going to give you two key points to explain why I think what Brenda teaches is so very important for all of us. First, and this is important, don't ever forget this. To be perfectly frank, the people who wrong us do not care at all whether we ever forgive them. They do not care. Forgiveness of others is always the gift that we give to ourselves. And forgiveness is the greatest gift that we can give to ourselves, no matter how hard it may be. Forgive everybody. And second, many people don't even realize that the core problems at the center of their lives had to do with things for which they blame themselves. Self forgiveness may, in your case, be something that you really desperately need to learn. For many people, they go through their whole lives blaming themselves for things that sometimes are not even their own fault, or even if they are their own fault, you've got to shed that burden. It's a whole lot easier to forgive others sometimes than it is to forgive ourselves. So, my dear Brenda, our guru of forgiveness, welcome. I'm so happy to have you back with us.
It is such a joy to be with you, Roberta. My heart is full every time I get to talk with you.
Well, I feel the same way, darling. So, all right, let's really talk today. I mean, I think we have a lot to talk about.
Yes, we always do, it seems.
So I'm not even sure where to begin. What do you think is the most important thing for us to talk about today?
So it feels like there is a lot of angst in the world, right? We've got a lot of things that are coming at us, and I'm watching a lot of people struggling with emotions and about feeling anger and feeling that it's wrong. So I wanted to touch on with you today and have a conversation with you about part of self-forgiveness and self-acceptance is learning about our emotional maturity and our emotions. and how that there's no bad or good. Because if we look at the world, right, it says that there's bad or good emotions, like anger is bad, sadness is bad. And why is that? Is it? You know, I don't think it is at all. I think that emotions are information. They're not directives. Like we don't have to really totally take action on them, but we can sure use them to understand ourselves and others better.
Wow,
Does that
that's
make
a really
sense?
profound thought. I hadn't thought of it that way. Talk about that.
Well, so this is what I've been exploring with people lately, and even myself as I've gone through this time period of moving my husband into memory care and also going through the death of my younger sister, like we were talking about before. And really, and then understand that just happening this year, and really looking at how much we've all gone through these last several years, as we've touched on in prior times that we've talked. And it's like we get caught in this emotional spiral and we act on it, right? We kind of react on our emotion
We
because
react.
we
Yes.
react instead of respond. And part of my teaching, right, is about pausing between that. So we can learn to respond versus react. Because once we can, now we're going to be hijacked. That's just part of being human, right? But understanding that being human is hard. It's hard. And it really is. And so really
Yeah,
understanding
you said a mouthful there.
how,
Did you? It's hard. Yes.
well,
Especially when stuff happens to you. You can't control your life.
no. And what do we hate the most? Being out of control, or what we think is control, right?
It's all the idea that you might be able to control it at all is an illusion.
It
Yes.
is. It is. But when we can get solid within ourselves, if we can build up, like we spend a lot of time exercising our core, right? If you think of this, and this was something that I was hearing about, it's like we spend time taking care of other things other than ourselves. But we also spend time, they say, to have better posture, right? You strengthen your back and you strengthen your core muscles, right?
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Well, what about our emotional core?
I don't know. I never thought of it that way. Yeah.
Well, and it's part of really because I've got several people who've come to me lately going, I can't control my emotions, I'm out of control, and it's like I'm crying all the time. And so it's like we take a breath, we center, right? We touch the heart, bring ourselves back to right here, right now. And in this moment, because I love, because this is what you talk about, like, especially in the course of when you're here in the moment, everything's okay. Everything is all right. It's when we start future tripping, right? About what if, or we think about the past that we think is going to inform our future,
True.
that we start to
That's
feel
right.
out of control.
That's right.
Yeah. And so working with people around the emotions has been a big part of my work for the forgiveness, because it's part of knowing ourselves and other people. So I don't have to react to somebody else's. It's kind of like to somebody else's reaction. So if somebody, this is what happened this year, and this is what I went through with this grief process with my sister, finding out that she died. She's younger than me. That's just like, this is not the way it's supposed to go,
Absolutely not.
right? So
No.
going through my own emotions around that, and then stopping and being in the observer mode of I'm allowing my own emotions, but I'm also being that calmness for those people around me. I'm the eye of the storm. And that's because
They, the people looked to you for that
yeah,
kind of strength.
yeah.
Wow.
But that's something that, because we do it out of experience, but it's like I'm an example. So the more that I've worked on my emotional core, now again, I'm still human, so I get sideswiped. I'm not, perfect, like we never are. But the more that I've worked on this emotional core, and the more that I have got to know myself and know when I start to feel triggered, then I can pause and then I can respond. I can allow the emotion because it has information for me. Like when I'm angry, I know my boundary has been crossed. Either I've crossed my own boundary or someone else has crossed a boundary.
Yeah.
Right? And in sadness actually helps me get out some of this energy that's stuck in my body and allowing me to grieve something that I have been holding on to that isn't serving me.
And that's a kind of forgiveness, really. You're forgiving the experience that
Yes.
you've gone through, which was a painful experience.
Absolutely.
Letting it go.
Absolutely. And I'm forgiving myself for how I feel like I've responded or reacted in the time. Because
Yeah.
a lot of us explode or we say things we don't mean, or we're
Yep.
so mean to ourselves. And this is what's so valuable, like you talked about. Because with me, all forgiveness is self forgiveness. All forgiveness is.
Well said.
Yeah, and this is something that really resonated with me when I started, when I went through this radical forgiveness training and really expanded upon it for myself, was if I look at it that way, then life is happening for me, not to me. And people have heard that, and it took a little while for me to understand that. How could life be, all this stuff that happened in my life, all the different abuse and the different neglect and all the things, how could that be for me? And then it was like, Brenda, what have you learned from it? You and I sit here today with wisdom. Wisdom comes from experience.
Right. Not all gifts are fun to receive, but they're gifts all the same.
Absolutely. Oh, I love that. Yeah, that's really good. I love that. Yeah, they're not all fun to receive. I'm going to write that one down. But they are gifts.
That's right.
Yeah, and once we can release ourselves or let go of the attachment to the story,
Right.
right? The
Right.
attachment to the story that I'm putting around this situation, this is huge. When I can do that, then I can have more clarity, which is really what I want,
Right.
about what is here for me. Because really, in my work, it's about looking at life, like we've talked about before, as a mirror.
That's right.
And all of the people that are teaching me things about myself that I can't see unless I look in a mirror.
It's true.
Yeah. Yeah.
So people are wondering then, you've had these two very painful things happen. Your beloved husband then started to lose his grip on his mind.
Yeah.
Very painful thing. And then unexpectedly, without warning, the loss of your younger sister. And with all that you know, with all this wisdom you've acquired, were you more able then to take these very bad experiences in your life than most people might have been able to take these bad experiences, do you think?
I will say yes. When it came to I was actually surprised myself at the death of my sister because of how I handled it. Excuse me. And I feel like what I've gone through these past several years, especially, like we've been going through this process of discovery with my husband for 6 years. And the last three is where we finally got a diagnosis. We finally found out what happened. And in that, I didn't handle it well in the beginning. I will
Oh,
tell
no, I would be devastated.
I will
Right.
tell you, this has been one of the deepest self-forgiveness, self-acceptance, and forgiveness of someone else than I've ever experienced, really, in my life. I thought I had gone, I know I've gone through betrayal, I've gone through neglect, I've gone through these things, but this one really did shake me to my core. Because when you have a spouse with dementia, versus like a parent, going through my parents' experience was different than my spouse. My spouse is my friend, my best friend. He's my partner. He's my playmate. He's the one that I share the secrets with. He's the one that knows me the most. And I felt like I was losing a part of me.
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
Of
because
course. Of
yeah,
course.
right, because the person that I married was no longer there. I mean, underneath it all, but he wasn't able to respond and interact the same way. And he
Of
was,
course.
and it was a
Oh, I
slow,
get it.
right?
Yeah,
It's slow.
totally.
And so I had to go through the emotional roller coaster of feeling sadness and anger and grief. I didn't know I was going through anticipatory grief. And this is a lot for people, the listeners, is important because a lot of us go through anticipatory grief and don't know it. And that is where we're anticipating a death of something. So, for instance, when you're in a relationship that isn't working well and you know that it needs to be over or done or have a good idea, you're in this grief process ahead of time. When,
Right.
right?
I had never thought of that, but yes, you would be.
Yes.
Yes.
And what this did was learning I was in anticipatory grief because this one was, I mean, it was a gut punch. And I felt like I couldn't think, I couldn't process. I was going through, the different stages of grief, basically. And that led me to becoming a grief educator. I took a certification with David Kessler because I needed to understand my own process because I started looking around at my clients going, they're going through the same thing too with life, with a loss of control, well, feeling like they've lost control and
Yes.
feeling like all the, job losses, relationship losses, friendships and going through what we've gone through these last 4 years has been a loss of so many things of the security that they thought that they had in life. So we're talking about not even forgiveness of self, but we're talking about forgiving life, right? For taking away what we thought.
That's big. That's really big. Yes.
So that's the process that I was being taken through was
Yeah.
really being, to where there was times and, there was times I'm going, I hate my husband, right? And I mean,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
the emotion that came up. It was so strong. And it's like, and then being reminded, hearing this little voice in my head going, Brenda, it's not him. It's not about him. I was hating the fact that he was being taken away from me. I was losing. See, it's always back to self. I was hating the fact that I didn't have what I thought I was going to have. My future was taken away.
Oh, yes. Oh, how terrible. I'm so sorry. I am so, so sorry.
Thank you. And it was fascinating to kind of go, and I kept praying. I was praying for compassion
Yeah.
for him, for the situation, I was just praying I was just praying, help me be nice, because I was just so upset. I just wasn't handling, and then I'm like going, how can I be a forgiveness coach if I can't even handle this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And finally, it was so cool. I was somewhere and it was so interesting. I was like, just really on my knees. Help me, please understand this and have compassion because I felt so much rage. And all of a sudden, this calmness came over me. It was beautiful, Roberta. And it was just this, Brenda, it's about having compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
It wasn't even about him. And I mean, it was just beautiful, like washing over me of love and understanding that it was beautiful. And I got
Again.
to shift my perception around how I was looking at the situation, which is what I teach.
Yeah.
helping people shift the perception around the story and situation and experience. And that helped me go, oh, okay, where's the gift in this?
Oh, my dear, that is so big. Did you find the gift?
I did. And so it took a while. And it really wasn't until this year, or actually the end of last year. And the gift was the power within myself to stand firmer in what I knew to be right. The choices that need to be made for him and for me, instead of continually second guessing myself and
Yeah.
then watching him get worse and worse, thinking I could do it all. I could take care of him. I could do a business. I could run my life. And I was
Yeah.
falling apart, right? And it
Yes.
really, the gift in this was knowing myself better. It was having my strength come out and knowing my tenacity, my courage, my bravery, all of that was, I had been pushing aside, trying to make it okay. And then I learned it through the death of my sister, was when I really realized the pure gift of the strength of the inner core that I had been working on, and being able to know that I had reached out and I had healed this relationship. I had helped heal with my sister. I had a good relationship because there was a time where she wouldn't talk to me for whatever reason. And I specifically really put boundaries around the relationship, but also reached out and I said, please forgive me for whatever I have done.
Yeah. Oh, how good that you healed the relationship before she
Yes, yes.
graduated.
Because
Wow.
there are certain family members that are super angry with her still. And
Oh,
that
how
is,
awful.
I know. And that's, when they're gone, it's like, that's no way to kind of leave the relationship. And we all process it. But the thing that I was able to do because of where I stood in this was be able to help my family members see a different side because I had done that inner work. Now they still have to process the emotion, but I'm an example and I'm here for them and I'm helping walk them through it because I already did. And because of this grief process that I had been in that shook me to my core over the last couple of years, I was able to find the compassion within myself that we all need when we go through a grief process.
Yes.
It's not easy.
No, it's not easy. But you had to then give up the life you were going to live
Yes,
with him and accept that because it wasn't your choice. You had a whole life you were going to live, and you had to accept there's such having your husband die before he's really going to die is a hard thing.
it's a hard thing. Yes.
I'm just trying to imagine. And you had to accept that it's not his choice,
No.
but he's gone now. And
Mhm.
so you've got a different life, not by your choice,
No.
and you have to forgive all of this. I mean, there's a whole mess of forgiveness in this. I mean, it's
Yes.
layers and layers of
There's layers.
forgiveness.
Yes. Thank you for recognizing that because that's really when I got that clarity, that moment of having compassion for myself, then I could see clearly, oh, this is a deep for self-forgiveness process. It really is.
And if you are someone who teaches forgiveness, what a great, huge amount of forgiveness there is in this for you to learn and therefore be able to teach. And what a gift that is.
Right. And that was the
Not
gift.
all gifts being good to receive.
Thank you.
Still,
Yes. Yes. And that was true because then I had to reach out. So many of us think that we can handle this on our own or we're supposed to. The shame of not being strong enough or good enough or whatever our core beliefs are, our
right,
beliefs that we've been
right.
raised with, I'm not strong enough. I'm not capable enough, and I didn't realize how in that I was until that moment. And then
Right.
it was taken to my knees and going, okay, help me. And once I said that, just like help me, it was so fascinating because I've been trying to do it, just kind of really losing myself, and my body was hurting, aching, my heart was aching. I was just becoming a puddle. And right after I just went, oh, the clarity of I can't do this by myself. Within a couple days, I went to this event, and these women stood up, and one said, hey, I'm a caregiver for people with dementia. This other lady stood up and says, I help people find assisted living or memory care places for people when they're ready.
There you go.
I know. It was like an immediate answer. It
Right.
was so good. It was like, oh, I just had to move out of my own way.
Yes, yes, yes. Isn't that wonderful? Oh, that's great.
Yes. And what a relief it was. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I wish I would have done this a while ago.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
No, in every great loss, there are great gifts.
Yes.
That
Yeah,
is really true.
it is. And it doesn't feel that way. Like you said, not every gift is fun to receive. But it sure, it goes back to that saying, we don't always get what we want. We get what we need.
That's really true. They wrote a song about that even. But that's really very, very, very true.
Yes.
And whenever the student is ready, the teachers appear and the helpers appear. That's always true.
Always.
We just have to be ready to work with them, ready to accept their help, and ready to, we just have to be ready.
Well, yeah, and some of us can be a little more stubborn than others, which I think is a good part of the human race. That
Yeah.
we all kind of think we can do it, and we all hang on to something because we're getting something from it, right? And, and it was a really great way. That was last year that happened. And it really helped relieve the pressure so I could see myself and my process more clearly. Because
Yeah.
when you're in the middle of it, you can't see it, yourself. So when I talk about that observer, and I think this, when we witness ourself, it's like really developing through this desire to want to understand the gift and the process, and so I could help others, but really so that I could get to a place of some sort of centering for myself, so I could show up in love to my husband and me. It was this ability to go, oh, and so the more that I had that desire, the more I developed the observer, so that I could observe instead of getting wrapped up in the emotion. I could have the emotion without being sideswiped by it, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yes. You have to become in control in some fashion because to
Yes.
feel out of control
Mhm.
is not an acceptable feeling, no matter what is going on. You have to be
No.
able to feel in control.
Well, and the way that I did it was when I could feel the emotion coming on, I would take a breath. I had to teach myself to do that, to take a breath and to get curious. What do you have to teach me? Is what I would ask myself
Good.
about my
Good.
emotion, right? And I mean, I had to go back to basics, because basics are always so good and foundational. It was, I don't need this complex, 14-step process. I just needed to go back to breathing, pausing.
Breathing is very good. Yeah.
I know breathing is powerful.
Right?
And yeah, and then witness and honoring my story. And that's part of those 5 steps that we talked about before, was really honoring my story, but not in a feel sorry for me way. It's more of a really curious way.
Yes. Yes. It's important to be open to the possibility of giving up things that we had thought were essential to our lives and making the slate fresh and clean and new and writing on it again.
Oh,
Because
yes.
that's something which I have found that people have a lot of trouble doing. Um, in my practice, back when I was doing much more financial planning, I was one of the first CFPs, number 812 in the whole country a million years ago. When I decided I didn't want to be a lawyer, before I decided, yeah, I am a lawyer after all. And one of the things I found was that when people had to make big changes to their lives, either because they lost a very big job or someone died and or some big change,
Yes.
they would cling to the stupidest things like, oh, but we have to keep the chauffeur because if we don't have the chauffeur, how are we going to, but who's going to go pick up the fried food on Fridays because we're Catholic? And it was stupid like that. I mean, really,
Yeah.
that's how there actually was a family that had that kind of problem. They both had to work now, and somebody had to be able to pick up the fried fish. It was duh, because we're trying to hold on to our house because we have a very expensive house. It was that stupid. I said, look, he lost the great big job. You both have to work now. Not only the chauffeur, but a whole lot of other things are going to have to change. Um, it
Yeah.
was a very interesting thing to watch what people would suddenly decide they had to keep. I couldn't get people to go down to basics and
No.
rebuild lives that were very different from when he was making $900,000 a year because now we are making a lot less money.
Right.
But it's still going to be a wonderful life. So that taught me a lot, watching people have to rebuild their lives.
Mm.
Um, I think that and one of the things it taught me was what a great opportunity it is. I said, not all gifts are fun to receive. It's
Yeah.
a gift to be 42 or 43 and suddenly realize that you're not going to have a lot of money you thought you would have because you can rebuild a life that's free of the burden of being rich. And
Yes.
it is a burden.
Mm.
People don't get that.
No.
I mean, it's so wonderful to have these terrible gifts. I can't begin to tell you.
Well, no, because we learn about ourselves. I mean, that's the only way we're willing to, if
Yes,
we have to be willing, but we can learn about ourselves. And that people with a lot of money have the same beliefs. They have the same, their money story is kind of the same as a lot of us. But we look at them differently, but they're not. They're human. They put their
they
pants
are.
like
And
they're
the and they have one big fear. They have no idea how to live without money.
yes.
Whereas people who have never had the money have a lifestyle, and I could prove it to you. I used to be able to prove it to people. They have a lot, they have there are people who have a tenth of their net worth
Yeah.
who have essentially an identical lifestyle. Identical. And in fact, a much happier lifestyle.
Mm.
I gotta tell you, I don't know how we got onto this, but you got me thinking about when I used to practice financial planning. It's amazing how that's true, but they're minus one big fear, because they've got it. I've taught them how to save for retirement. They're not worried about anything because they know they're going to have enough money to retire when they get there. It's amazing how they're free of that big fear. But the people who are rich are always afraid what happens if the stock market doesn't do what we need it to do.
Yep.
What happens if our business, if they suddenly discover a cure for, I have no idea whatever their business does, yeah, they've got fears.
They do.
You don't
They have,
have to have fears. It's
right.
amazing.
Do you think it's a shift of perception that helps those people you were just talking about when they have a tenth of what they used to make, but they're happier? Do you think it's like a shift of how they looked at their story, or what do you think helped them?
What
It,
helps them is if they take sensible advice,
Mm.
rebuild their lives, and they suddenly realize they're actually happier because they don't have that worry about money anymore. They
Mm.
discovered they can live just as happily in a smaller house, but actually with more free cash and without that worry.
You know, you must have been just a wonderful financial planner to help people with that because, they need to trust you in that. And you have a beautiful energy of trust, plus you've got the wisdom of it. I mean,
Well,
that's,
I finally learned to do it really well.
yes.
But then I just I got tired of telling the same story over and over again. I did it for probably 10 years, but then I discovered that the people I loved most were the people who own businesses. And I got very interested in helping business owners. And so that's what I shifted to. But there
Oh,
was a while there when I really loved helping people who had suddenly had some kind of crisis and they needed fast to figure out because there was a period during the early part of the dot-com thing
yes.
in the
Yeah.
90s
Yeah.
when a lot of people were suddenly in crisis financially. And
Absolutely.
that's
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was helping a lot of those people, and it was funny how traumatized they were when they had had a big job and suddenly they lost their big job. Oh my goodness. And you couldn't easily get another one because suddenly the dot-com bubble burst.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and that's a part of, and there's forgiveness in that too, because there's a part of the forgiveness work that I do that's called Heal Your Money Story. And it's helping people to find out what is that fear that they have, because a lot of people don't know, like you just said, most people don't know that their fear is of losing it. Who am I without this money?
Who am I?
Who am
Yeah, suddenly I'm still trying to go to the same country club, but I can't afford to pay $30,000 a year or whatever the fee is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and they feel less than, they feel shame. And so that right there is the forgiveness work in the sense of identifying that part of them. It's like, what part is shameful? What is that story? Whose narrative in your head is that? It's not yours. It came from somewhere. And so when we can do that and trace it back and connect the dots, that's when we can bring in this total shift of how we look at it and learn that compassion and learn to go, oh, here's the gift. The gift is that I don't have the pressure. I'm actually freer to do things. I don't feel so bad about myself. In fact, I like myself better.
You're still the same person. You
Right.
just don't have as much money, that's all.
Well, but that it's the shame and the guilt and the persona that goes with that, that they thought that it's the identity. So it's the identity that they've created when really that's not who they are. That's an identity. It's not who you are at the core.
And however much money you have, there's always people that got more.
Oh, and
Unless your
less.
name is
And yeah.
Bezos, that's it.
Yep. Yeah. But yeah, it's amazing when we can get down and figure out it's not about the money. It's not about the money at all. It's really goes back to that core, like we've been talking about, that core self. Who is that core self within us? And that's what I like to help people find is rediscover this core person that we were, that we came in with, that we were connected with spirit,
Mm.
that we've learned to cover up. It's not gone. We've just learned to cover it up with all these different masks and identities and belief systems and different things. It's like, gosh, most people are asking, who am I? Well, you're a beautiful being at the core. And we've just learned these survival techniques. We've learned defense mechanisms. We've learned these things to try to survive in this world. But really, we all are so craving to be the person that we know we are underneath.
It is too bad, though. It's too bad how many people judge themselves
Oh,
by how much money they have.
oh, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really is.
Yes, I knew a person who would get upset when they got down below $100,000 in their checking account.
checking account.
checking account. I mean, freak out. They would freak out. And I'm thinking to myself going, wow. I mean, having 999,000. Oh my God. That would be amazing. But I mean, they had such a story around
What would
that.
you spend it on? I can't imagine.
I don't know. Well, country clubs, making people think that you're more important because money to them was power. I know. I know. So yeah, we all have it.
Now let's talk about forgiveness.
Okay.
Forgiving oneself for feeling that way, I think, would be a very important thing, but I don't know how you do that. I think we have to understand that really feeling that way is something we need to free ourselves from.
Mhm.
And that is something really to forgive.
Absolutely. It's knowing yourself. So this is goes
Yes.
back to understanding who am I? So we identify like what is that fear that comes up? So if it's like this person that I knew that it dropped down below 100,000, what does that say about you? What are you making this up to mean about you? That's the key to forgiveness because it's that story, that belief that's underneath that's where all the gold nuggets are.
So how did you help someone like that?
So we get to, it's like, okay, tell me what this means about you. What do you feel? What are you afraid of? So we just dive into the story. Tell me the story. Who are you if you don't have $100,000 in your checking account? Who are you? Well, nobody's going to believe me. Nobody's going to trust me. Everybody looks up to me. I can't help this is what we got to. I can't help as many people. But on top of I can't help as many people was really that they were trying to help themselves because they felt like no one would love them because they weren't good enough. So they were money told people I'm good enough to them because they had learned that from their father.
Okay. Okay, I can see
Right? Do you
that.
see that connection? They
Yeah,
had learned that from their father. And so they were never ever good enough for their dad. The dad always paid, gave money for love and said that, you have to make this much money, you have to have this kind of degree, you have to have this, or people won't respect you. That's a money story.
yeah.
And that's a belief system. So this person grew up instead of loving themselves, having people appreciate them for who they are, they put all of their energy into creating money when they felt so empty inside. And so once we got to that point, that's where we can start to build up the acceptance of self. So we can even forgive. So this acceptance and forgiveness go hand in hand
Yeah.
because we have to know the story first. We have to know what is the trigger, what is the voices in the head, and who are those voices. Then we work on that story. Then we get to the belief. Then we can shift the perception around that belief.
Wow, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And that's what I get to watch happen with
Yeah,
people as I get to be a witness along their journey
that's
of
pretty
just holding
lovely.
this, yeah, just holding the space for that shift to happen.
That's really lovely.
And it's doable. It's not, people think, oh, I can't do that. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can.
But being able to free yourself from all these perceptions that hold you limited, really make you feel uncomfortable. That's important. That's very important because it limits your happiness
It does.
to be restricted in that way. So it must be wonderful to be able to help people and free them.
Well, it
Let's
is.
see, smile.
Yeah, it is. And that's the word that they use. I feel lighter. I feel freer. I hear that most often. I feel lighter and freer because that's where it comes back to that's the gift to the self.
Yes.
Because really, when we're searching externally for approval and to feel good enough, we're never going to get it because those people don't feel good enough.
Yeah.
So when we can bring it in and learn to love ourselves, appreciate ourselves, that's the freedom of forgiveness.
Because having these sort of horribly limited negative, ultimately negative thoughts about themselves. They have to have that money or they're not good. They
Right.
have to have won these degrees or they're not good. Those are all negative things. So
Right.
what you're doing is helping them free themselves from these negative feelings about themselves. They're not
Yes.
positive feelings. None of them are.
No. No, and that weighs heavy because that feeds the shame and the guilt.
Oh, my dear, I'm so sorry we've come to the end of our time. I could talk with you all day long. Oh, this is so fascinating, but we'll have to do this again soon.
Hey, I so enjoy our conversations.
So what do you want people to take away from what we've talked about today?
Oh gosh, we've talked about so much. So really what I would like to share with all the listeners is that you're worth taking the time to be curious about, to learn more about you and how you work, because that's the freedom. Instead of looking outside of yourself, just take a moment and allow yourself to pause, breathe, go back to basics, and be able to respond to a situation because that's going to be your gift.
That's beautifully said.
Thank you.
And the more you know about yourself, freer and the happier you're going to be.
Yes,
I love
very.
it. Oh, bless you, my dear.
Thank
And
you.
please consider yourself hugged.
Well,
I'm so sorry about your husband and your sister. Oh, my dear.
thank you.
And for everyone, I am so, oh, isn't she beautiful? I just love her so much. Everybody, my beloved friends, we've come to the end of our time once again, and this has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. I'm so glad you could be with us today, especially. Please never forget that you are a powerful, eternal being. You never began and you never will end. I promise you that. When you really get the implications of that, though, it's going to change everything, everything in your life for the better. Next week, our guest will be Kelvin Chin once again. He's going to be with us once again, also for the fifth time, just like Brenda. I don't know what it is, but there are a few people I just love. I love having them back. Kelvin is an author, a meditation teacher, and a life after life expert. His first book was Overcoming the Fear of Death. I think overcoming the fear of death through life or through something like that. It's a longer title. His second book is Marcus Aurelius. This is really a weird book. He's lived, I think, 67 times or something, and goes through all of those lives. It took him a while to recover them all. And I said, I don't want to talk about your past lives, but I think we did last time anyway. And then he has a third book as well called After the Afterlife. No, that was his second book. I'm sorry, I tried to memorize all this, never a good idea. But Kelvin is executive director and founder of the Turning Within Meditation and Overcoming the Fear of Death Foundations. That's a mouthful. He is an internationally recognized meditation teacher. Been featured in Business Insider, Newsweek, and Kaiser Health News. And Kelvin has taught meditation at West Point in the U.S. Army and including in the demilitarized zone in Korea. I don't know. Kelvin loves getting into trouble. I know that was another thing. I said to him when he told me that, well, how come they didn't capture you? Because I think Kelvin is of Korean ancestry. He could easily have ended up in North Korea, but that's just who he is. He's a lot of fun to talk with, so please be sure to join us next week. And this week, our guest has been the wonderful, wonderful Brenda Reiss. She also has been with us for the fifth time, and Brenda is our guru of gratitude. As you can see, she has really researched gratitude, she teaches gratitude, and she's had plenty of reason to research gratitude and how it can be used to make your own life better because she's had some pretty tough breaks in her life. She guides people through a 5-step forgiveness process that's easy to understand and to learn. She says that self-forgiveness originally helped her to transition out of victimhood from her childhood and into the life that she was meant to live. But again, as I say, she's had some tough breaks. It can do the same for you, she says, and she's written, I called her book wonderful. It's a little book, a little small book, and it's called Forgive Yourself. It's short, it's easy to understand. I think everybody should read her book. The first thing we have to understand, though, as I say, and I really mean this, nobody cares. Nobody who has ever done you wrong cares if you forgive them, really. Every time you forgive everyone, it's just for yourself. It's a gift you give yourself. So learn how to forgive, learn how to do it easily and often, and learn the complex ways in which you are holding on to unhappiness with yourself so you can learn to forgive yourself too, because that's the biggest gift you can give yourself, is always forgiving every wrong that you've ever done to yourself. Learn forgiveness most of all. Jesus taught us how to do it, and our wonderful friend Brenda teaches how to do it. Once you have forgiven everything, you will be free and you will be truly happy, and I promise you that. Now, as you know, our great friend Craig Hogan is the president of Seek Reality Online, and that's your one-stop resource for all things afterlife. Really, learn about eternal life, because whether you like it or not, that is your destiny. You can't get out of it even if you want to. So learn about it and enjoy learning about it ahead of time, because then when you get there, you're going to feel right at home, because it is your eternal home. And teachingsbyjesus.com is your resource for all the beautiful divine truths that are brought to us in perfect love for all the beautiful, beautiful, eternal realities that are part of your eternal home with Master Jesus. Now, really, it is Jesus's turn. Don't you think it's time? Christianity, the religion, was not created by Jesus. It was created by the Roman Emperor Constantine. When Jesus finally has his turn, you're going to want to be comfortable there. So let's start learning what Jesus taught. And as you know, I have some books, but I don't have time to talk about them now because I talked for so long with our beautiful friend Brenda. So if you want to talk about anything, just go to the I think I talked too much this time. I'm all hoarse. You can always contact me through the green contact block on robertagrimes.com. I get a lot of emails, but I'll email you back as soon as possible. Just make sure you give me your correct email address. And all of the more than 550 past episodes of Seek Reality are available wherever audio podcasts can be found. You also can see the new video episodes each week on Roku, Fire Stick, YouTube, and elsewhere. Meanwhile, this has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Please enjoy and make the most of this coming week in our one reality, always knowing, being certain that you are a powerful, eternal being, and most of all, in this whole universe, you are infinitely, eternally, and perfectly loved.